What's happening? Benton here. Figured y'all might as well look at my birdie face. Oh shit. How's my hair? Oh goodness. Now I get to sit here and look at myself. I like watching my icon vibrate on the audio only streams. Now I get to sit here and watch myself in the StreamYard. Although I have bifocals, really I need trifocals. I can't really see at this distance. So if comments come in, I'll be like this, man. What a mess. Just I think I'm on the verge of this. Anybody ever heard this? Uh, Lao Tzu or whoever said, "He who knows tells it not. He who tells knows it not." What's up, Jay? It's me. How you doing, man? Jay's over there in Scotland. Every time I see a crane, I think of Jay. Yeah, here in Los Angeles. Thanks, man. Yeah, yeah. Really, normally I would have shaved my head by now, but not that it's cold in SoCal, but uh, you know, it's definitely colder in the winter with a shaved head. So, oh, Jay's in the crane now. Fantastic, making them big bucks, right? How's life in the UK? Um, America, man, I don't even want to complain about America at this point. It's farcical. Hey, what's up? A mention of Mr. Crocco. Yeah, yep. Long live Davy Crocco. Yeah. Uh, I don't know what he would think of the Elon Musk running rampant through the government type of news. Oh, crap in the UK. Yeah, yeah. I don't even know what to say anymore. It's mainly I get a kick out of watching a lot of these normie videos that show up in my algorithm, and now I'm starting to find these content creators. Since I'll never use TikTok myself, but there's a lot of people on YouTube that go out and find all of these TikTok videos, and it's a lot of and I'm 50, 49, and it's a lot of younger folks complaining about trying to get jobs and getting ghosted, applying for all these jobs, going through the multiple interview process, and then yeah, yeah, he would be ripping all of this apart, Davy Crocco. Yeah, that's right. His commentary would be epic. Yeah, definitely, definitely. I've given up. Not that I ever was involved in the first place, but yeah, I don't even know what to say anymore. It's everything's it's just become so surreal and farcical, but it probably always was. Oh, that's right. Jay's birthday's coming up. Yeah, the big 50, partner. The big 50, Friday the 14th. Yep. I had the battery power and nothing else to do, and it's windy, man. I don't like the high winds. I'm no fan of the winds. Walking around picking up the cans and bottles, so I said, "Fuck it, I'm going to call it a day early." So not even 1 p.m. Pacific. Of course, I'm asleep by like 5 p.m. I don't know if that's depression or just my normal sleeping hours these days. I guess if I was actually depressed, I would just go to sleep now and be like, "Fuck it," and then I'd be awake at 10 p.m. That's no good. Carlitos, that's right. Thanks. Yeah, yeah. My hairstyle is matching the economy. Hey, well, and I haven't paid for a haircut in like 15 years. I either shave my head or I just let it grow. I've had shoulder length hair. Actually, when I went into truck driving, I had hair down to my shoulder and a long beard. Yeah. El Perro in the house. Uh-oh. Not making any money, Jay. Jay says this new job is crap. Cash is very low. Had to go to food bank to feed the family. Wow. Looking for better work. Damn. Might have to sell a car. Look out. Yeah, I remember El Perro with the long hair. I remember that. Yeah. Mine actually grows again for a while there when I was, before I knew how ill I had become with my chronic illnesses. It got to where it stopped. Actually, when it was shoulder length, it just stopped growing. It got to where it never got any longer, bizarrely. So, what the fuck is this? Strange. But yeah, it's funny watching these normies trying to cope with the dystopia and the constant bright siding of everything. The obsession with remaining positive, and then I see other things in my feed, and it's some normie talking about how society has become toxic. And what I've realized is society is always toxic. There's never a moment in human history when society is not toxic. And what I've come to realize is it's our own programming and brainwashing that causes us to see it as not toxic. And coming up through the public, the indoctrination centers, the public education system, then into the workforce and corporations and all of this, and how all of that is normalized, uh, and then fitting in and going along to get along. And then something like the 0809 financial crisis happens. Um, Not that many people woke up, not that waking up is a thing, but and then into the fake pandemic, uh, where the system actually shows itself for what it is. But then what happens? People for a period of time seem to come out of their brainwashing and their programming. And, we have a few years of commentary and talking about how horrible things are and the loop into problem solving, right? And how much of a mistake that is. But then now it's just right back to the toxic positivity. It seems it's just right back to you know the idea that if I can't go out and get a job and pay my bills and live in a house or an apartment and make a go of things, that it somehow reflects on me as a human, right? And I'm done with that. I reject that out of hand. It's simply not the case. You can't have, and what is my reward anyway, right? Going to a workplace with a bunch of people that I can't stand and they can't stand me, but simultaneously we all pretend to get along. Like we all pretend like you know whatever the business is some sort of worthy undertaking. It's a complete waste of time, realistically. The idea of in this economy, the economy is a motherfucking waste of time. I mean, it really is. It's a waste of human. It's a waste of humanity. I can't think of any more effective way, other than perhaps somebody taking it to the streets and injecting street drugs. Right. Beyond that, what is a greater waste of humanity than the economy, right? And the stock market and corporations, right? And what has been the case probably for all of human history, but certainly since I came out of my mama in 1975, is the function of the economy is to make rich people richer every moment of every day into perpetuity. And it never fails in that purpose, ever. There's never a moment in your life and my life when the economy, right, fails to make rich people richer. Not even for 1 second does it ever fail to make rich people richer. And everybody who has to go to a place and do a thing to maintain their lifestyle, or who stays in their home and has to log into a system and do things on a computer every day to maintain their lifestyle, that's a poor person. Make no mistake, rich folks ain't got to do anything. Rich folks don't have to do anything, and their life doesn't change. Rich folks, there's almost nothing they can do to fall from what they were born into. There's almost nothing they can do to fall out of that class. It's virtually impossible, right? But then I'm supposed to internalize and feel bad because I didn't go out into capitalism and compete and make something of myself in spite of my aptitude, by the way. What I would say is the system failed to identify my aptitude, and the fact that, wow, while this person is super high functioning, that's a short bus retarded person. So we better steer that person and guide them and support them. See, an actual society, if society was healthy, right, that's what it would have happened to me. They would have said, well, wait a minute, this is a highly capable, high functioning person. He's testing in the 99th percentile in certain ways, but look at this other ways he's a fucking retard. So probably what we should do is enable him and steer him and support him in the right direction. But no, not in this wicked, evil, toxic system. It's just left up to me. I'm just left up to my own retarded devices to try to make a go of things, right? And the conclusion I've came to as well: if it doesn't work for me, why would I waste my time in things like employment, right? And this is the conclusion I reached in the fallout from 0809, right? Which was like, yeah, it was easy for me to go along with things when I could work at a gas station. And if something happened that I didn't like, I could quit that job and literally walk across the street, walk in, and they would hire me. There was never a go on the website and fill out an application, right? There was never a, well, here's an application and we'll call you. They just fucking hired you right then, right? So when it worked for me, I was more than willing to show up and pretend, and I didn't even pretend. I did a good job, right? Because that's my personality. That's part of being super high functioning retard. I'm not able to develop the mechanisms to go into a corporation and then fake the funk. Meanwhile, since I read the newspaper and I've been a reader my whole life and I've obsessively taken in information, it was 20 years ago I was reading news articles and weekly magazine articles, Time magazine or whatever. And oh, look, here's a study. It turns out middle managers can't tell the difference between the employees who work 40 hours a week in a white collar job and the ones who pretend to work 40 hours a week. So I'm already at a disadvantage because I don't have the capacity as a super high functioning retarded person. I'm not able to show up and pretend how to work, or sorry, to pretend that I'm working. Right. And these, surprise, surprise, are the exact same people who also know how to take credit for everybody else's work and know how to smooth all of the management, right? And know how to stay in everybody good graces while simultaneously undermining you. Meanwhile, I've got a superpower called I know how to live in the streets with nothing, right? And as we see, as each day goes by and more people are forced into homelessness by design, by the way, right? By design, as more and more people are forced into street level homelessness and shelters. And, again, in America, everything's a business. So I'm already adapted to that. I've already lived that life, am living that life to a certain extent. Although I do have the luxury of quality sleep because, as you see, I'm in my Nissan Versa here. And really, the only thing that even my only hesitation to even getting rid of this car and just wandering about on foot is, I don't want to give up my high quality sleep. It is difficult to get quality sleep on a consistent basis, sleeping in the streets, but it is still possible, certainly. Um, yeah. Well, but this is everything, Carl. See, this is all systems of man, and this is where I've gotten to. Carl says capitalism is good if long wall of text, very encouraging, dynamic. Yeah, exactly. And I, by the way, I'm full doomer. I'm not even trying to be encouraging. I just, for whatever reason, I feel compelled to at least provide like a best case scenario. But also, this was back when the system needed all hands on deck, and there was still a building up of the country. There was still something of a manufacturing base, right? This was, as the Ross Perot's giant sucking sound of NAFTA was, as those mechanisms were first being put into place to outsource so many of the jobs, right? They still needed people like me to be willing to go into employment, right? That's what the system needed. It wasn't that back in the 80s and 90s, society was less toxic. It wasn't that, well, people were better back in. No, none of that is true. People were just as much a pieces of shit in the 80s and 90s as they are today. Just as much. It's that there's more sophisticated mechanisms like the internet, um, pharmaceutical drugs, that society's mechanisms for supporting people in their degeneracy has accelerated. So the degeneracy has accelerated. The deterioration of the populace has accelerated. The dumbing down of the populace has accelerated. Meanwhile, none of that can happen without the populace's consent. So the trajectory has been there my whole life, right? This is nothing new. And boomers especially love to romanticize the good old days. They weren't the good old days. I promise you, there was an underclass back in the good old days. There's never not an underclass. There's never not a group of people being uh, preyed upon by the system. And that's because of heaven or hell realm tenant number one. The main feature of this heaven or hell realm, which is manifesting as a hell realm, is that humankind is not capable, has never been capable, and never will be capable of creating and operating systems that are free of corruption, that are free of predation, that are free of graft, that are free of exploitation. It's not possible, which is why people can cheer the efforts of Donald Trump and Elon Musk till the cows come home. That's fine, right? It's not going to bear fruit. And in fact, I'll take it to Kaczynski. It is going to bear fruit. That fruit is going to benefit the system. It is going to continue to support the system. It's going to continue to enable the system to do what? To run us right the fuck over. And humans, for whatever reason, are happy to be run over as long as humans get to participate in what? The national religion, which is consumerism. And it's now, especially with the social media, it's all about how can I make my life come across on various social media platforms. That's all anybody cares about. That's it. Nobody cares about anything else, right? Now, again, there's always exceptions to everything. And you can say, well, I'm not that way. Yeah, I'm not that way. You're not that way. So fucking what? We're outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. There's 999,000 of them for every one of me and you. What the fuck does it matter? Right? It's irrelevant. We are out motherfucking numbered. And that's why the system won't ever shut the fuck up about democracy. It's not supposed to be a democracy. In democracy, if 65% of the population believes that a mask protects you from a deadly disease, guess what? You got to cover your face, partner. And the ones who say, well, I never had to cover my face, yeah, you don't leave your motherfucking house, and that's fine. I'll be friends with a hoarder shut in. But, I was in Kansas City. I was on with Chalk Body Outline years ago in Kansas City, every single person had their face covered, even outdoors. And as I'm relaying this to Drew on a chalk body outline, somebody's typing into his chat, well, I'm in Kansas City and nobody's wearing a mask. I'm like, yeah, it's because you don't leave your house. It's because you're looking out your window and you don't see anybody in a mask because nobody's walking down the street right now. That is representative of nothing. Meanwhile, humans have an unlimited ability to put their motherfucking heads in the sand, and that was what was so unique about the fake pandemic is, most of us that circumvented our ability to the constant bright siding of everything. At a certain point, the constant bright siding of everything it couldn't be done anymore during the fake pandemic, and people had to actually face what the fuck was going on. And what do we see now? It's that has passed, and that effect has worn off. So the stimulus has been removed, and this is where I come down on the side of David Goggins, right? The guy who wrote the book Can't Hurt Me. And again, I'm into ideas, not people and personalities. But one of his famous quotes is motivation is crap. And he's right. Motivation is crap. Go out and get motivated all you want. Look at what the fake pandemic. Look at the fake pandemic motivated so many people to change their thinking, not permanently. They changed their thinking until the stimulus was removed, and then they just went right back to how they used to think. What fucking good is that? What good is that? It's not any good. And I'm seeing it in the so-called truth community. And that's part of the reason why you only see a 14. That's why I'm pointing at a 14, right? Wouldn't have been that long ago. This would have been like a 36, would not have been that long ago, right? It's that effect has worn off, right? So now I'm back to being a motherfucking crazy person. See, but I haven't changed. Now my thinking has evolved. My thinking has progressed. It's always going to progress until I draw my last breath. I haven't changed though, philosophically. What has changed is the climate in which I'm speaking, and that has changed this number. And it's also changed my popularity on this platform. I ain't near as popular as I was. See, and that's okay with me. That's all right with me. I ain't got a problem with that. Now, I love me some attention, and I am powered by compliments to some extent. But again, back to the David Goggins motivation is crap. Yeah, I don't have to have that. See, I ain't Jack Talcott. Jack ain't got no choice. Jack's got to go live every day and have his smoke blowed up his ass. I can log off this motherfucker and not go live for years if I want to. That ain't gonna be and that's probably what's finna happen, which is fine because I'm really not that interested in making. Well, in fact, I've already made homeless content. I did it years ago before live streaming was even a thing, right? Like I'm so ahead of the curve at a certain point, it just wraps back around, and it's like, why even bother, and that type of content is passe anyway, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. I don't know that I don't think you can help this channel though, realistically, but you can try. You can try. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Yes. Uh, yeah, stands out from the crowd. That's right. What choice do I have? What choice do I have? Oh, and I just don't really have the energy for this anymore, honestly. Part of my progression is, the more my body is healing and the more my, other things in my psyche are healing, and the more control of my emotions that I'm garnering. Just I don't really. It's just not worth the expenditure of energy. I'm not going to come on here and do a low effort, low energy broadcast. Right? That ain't me. Um, that ain't me. But I see who's around and who ain't around. Right? I see who will show up and show their face in the chat when I've fallen out of favor and who won't. And I'm very astute. I'm very astute at picking up on little cues here and there. And this is back to the super high functioning retarded person. I ain't that smart in the moment. but I'm really fucking smart over time when I've had time when I've been able to take in all this information. I'm very observant. And then over time, I put together the pieces of the puzzle. And I'm like, yeah, that's why that happened. That's interesting. Almost like a Sherlock Holmes, but like a cold case almost. That's right. Yeah, show your face. Yeah. Perhaps a poor choice of words there, Barney, but good to see you. That was a metaphor, right? Oh, I'm way stronger. Bro, I could barely walk around this motherfucker. When I first got to LA, when I first got here, I could barely fucking walk. Like I was capable of walking, but I couldn't even walk at full speed. I'm one of them fast walkers. I've been a fast walker my whole life, and I was dragging my ass up and down these hills. I was basically just making myself collect the recycling and just forcing myself to walk around all day because I knew that's what I needed to do. And I actually got my legs back. And that was part of having the long COVID. And I took shit for that on here because there was people were like, "Oh, you believe in COVID and you believe in this and that." I said, listen, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I got hit with a motherfucking bioweapon, just like every single person that I personally knew, where my mom and my sister and my nephew live in northern Arkansas at the exact same time that the CDC claimed that Baxter County, Arkansas had the highest so-called case rate in the country. At the same time, the national news media was promoting the Ozarks, meaning all of the counties that border. Too much truth, I guess. Fucking StreamYard crashed. How about you? Make sure I'm still here. Well, yeah, and that's thank you, Jay, for the compliment. Yeah, I have a great mind. Exactly, I have a beautiful mind, and that's I think that's one of the main things that the most of the audience doesn't understand is I don't need to come on here, and to some extent, you're welcome for sharing my beautiful ideas because I walk around all day and I get a higher version of this broadcast in my head than y'all ever get on here, right? So, and this is what I've said before is I see the end of the road for me is I'm going to be one of these homeless people that just wanders around and you see them, I see these people, they're always there and they don't really talk to anybody. They don't really have any friends and they just keep to themselves. And they probably also have a beautiful mind. They probably have the same kind of brain. I don't know. I've never been bored as an adult in my life, not once. Doesn't exist because I can just walk around thinking all day and I'm good to go. And the thinking, the walking goes with the thinking, right? They go hand in hand. Um, so yeah, part of my becoming stronger or whatever is um, when I was in Fort Smith doing the all the live streaming from the doing all the live streaming from the motel. That's when I hadn't gotten my legs back yet. And at a certain point, I just started making myself walk like 7 miles a day, and it was kicking my ass. Like it was kicking my ass bad. And then, I sort of got discouraged at a certain point and stopped doing it. Or I would just do it sporadically. And that's where the homeless lifestyle has always suited me. It's just I'm walking like 10 miles a day I'm not exaggerating. I walk 10 miles a day every day. Um, like no kidding. And in fact, there was a point when I first got to LA, I walked 20 miles a day for I walked 100 miles in like 5 days. And, there's a benefit to that. There really is. And, it works for me. But what doesn't work for me is trading, Trade in your hours for a handful of dimes. It's just not, realistically, there's not employment that can pay me to where it's worth my time. Now, truck driving is a bit of an outlier to some extent, but then it really precludes me from walking. There's not really an opportunity to walk. I've gotten out of my truck at some of these facilities where they'll kidnap me for hours, and I'll just start walking around sometimes, and the security will come say, "Hey, you got to get back in your truck," you know, because everything's a liability, and every once in a while, you know, somebody's on the facility, and something unforeseen happens, right? And by the way, that's part of being, in society. you know Toxic society is everybody is guilty. It's not innocent until proven guilty. It's guilty, right? It's just I'm capable of whatever as far as the system is concerned, and I must be treated as if I'm capable of doing anything. And eventually, I think that is where society is going to go with the AI and the surveillance and the technologies, and we're basically on the verge of people being able to have some Google Glass or whatever with the facial recognition, and just be able to walk down the street and immediately know whether or not that's a person they in the area that has some sort of dangerous background, right? And then, as we know, in the UK, they've had for years computer algorithms that actually analyze body language, and if somebody's has body language where it looks like maybe they're about to mug somebody, or they're hanging out near the ATM to try to find somebody to rob, the fucking computer system will just dispatch the cops, right? And then it won't be long, and that'll be a drone. The drone will just show up and be like, "Hey, get the fuck out of here, buddy." You know, it's all happening like that. And it wasn't that long ago that I was listening to Alex Jones and the normies. If for some insane reason I tried to share any of this information with the normies, like I was a conspiracy theorist, I was a crazy person, right? That was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now the normies just accept all of this as normal. It's just like, oh yeah, that's just how it is, right? It's just, oh well, that's how it is. Shout out to the chat. Well, I am showing my pretty face, Jay. So it's probably a bunch of randos. But shout out to the randos. Why not? Why not have some randos pop in and out? Now, for me, one of the keys to all of this is I'm divorced from the part of life where we have to loop into problem solving. Right. And when I first encountered all of these panels, the StreamYard panels in the so-called truth community, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever, you know, I was listening to people like Freedom Grower and others just obsessively going into problem solving and solving the problems of society. Right. It's like, well, wait a minute. We're not the ones tasked with solving these problems. And that's assuming that any of the problems of society are even solvable, which they're not, by the way. Uh, it's just not, it's a non starter, you know? And then people who believe that they're conservatives, people that believe that they're MAGA, don't understand the idea of the person who brings up the problem is then forced to offer the solution. That's straight out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Well, they've never read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. It's right there in the book. It says, and you saw this when Obama was president at all them town halls. Anytime somebody from the opposition mentions a problem, make them offer a solution and then attack the solution. It's in the fucking Rules for Radicals. So now you have people who believe themselves to be mom, apple pie, American exceptionalism, MAGA, make America great again. And they have become the enemy because they never understood the enemy, and they've unknowingly adopted the tactics of the enemy, right? But still believe that they're somehow distinct from Democrats. They're not. Anybody who thinks that they are traditional family values in 2025 America in any meaningful way that can be distinguished from so-called Democrats is out of their motherfucking minds. You're the same, right? Or they're the same fucking thing, right? Uh, Go to church anywhere in this country, go to a Christian church and sit down with 100 people, right? Those people are just as immoral, just as decadent, just as depraved behind closed doors as if I go hang out with 100 Antifa, 100 trans people, 100 people with multicolored hair. It's equally morally repugnant. The same. It's just one group leads with it. One group says, this is my identity. And the other group says, well, our identity is opposed to all of this moral repugnance. We want to put ourselves out there as morally upright. But then when you look at what they do when they think nobody can see, it's just as bad. It's just as immoral. So what's the fucking difference? What's the difference? Do you think, and again, if there's a judgment after this experience, do you think the judge gives a fuck? Oh, well, this person hid their dirt. This person hid their immorality and pretended to be righteous. So I guess that's okay. So they get to make the cut. But then these people who had the weird colored hair and, the gender benders, the kink community, the people that led with their decadence and depravity, well, we got to, off to the fucking lake of fire with them. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense to anybody? Of course not. Of course not. How could it? Yeah, Nick Rekieta. That's right. Nick Rekieta went to church with a polycule. Exactly. Thank you. And as we know, if again, psyop nation. This nation is psyop upon psyop upon psyop. But uh, BTK, Dennis Rader, he was like a deacon in the church. So those good God fearing Christians couldn't had the personification of evil in their midst and couldn't tell the difference. He killed the locals in where was that, Wichita or Topeka, Kansas, or wherever the fuck that was. He preyed upon the locals for like 25 years. They couldn't tell the difference. So I could be more, well, not me, but well, although I am, but let's take not me as an example, but we could have one person that is morally upright, that's viewed as morally upright, and have them in the church, and then we could have Dennis Rader, the most evil person we could ever fucking imagine, and people can't tell the difference. Just like in the corporation, the middle manager can't tell the difference. If I pretend to work 40 hours a week, can't tell the difference between me and somebody who actually works 40 hours a week. And that's society, which is toxic. Society's never not toxic, right? Now we have this old timey notion of Happy Days and Ozzie and Harriet in the 50s and all of this. No, it wasn't any better back then. It just wasn't as the progression towards further enslavement and further hell, right? And further dystopia. It just wasn't as far along that progression, right? Because this is the good old days. I hate to break it to you folks. 40 years from now, they'll be looking back on this as the motherfucking good old days. So what's the difference? It's just that 40 years ago was 1984, 1985, and that was, oh, well, that was the good old days. Was it? So you telling me so now logically I can transport myself 40 years into the future, and this is the good old days, right? So what are we even talking about? What are we even talking about? Oh man. Shame on the mess. Shame on the mess. I'm hooping and hollering too much. Let me chill out. Oh, we hit 30. We hit 30. Oh man. Well, the problem is the solution. See, that's where it really gets deep, Joe. And I'm not disagreeing with you. Good, it's always good to see Joe Moore around. Certainly, one of the few that's capable of critical thinking. Uh, but I'm leveling up. So, the problem and the solution, it's all the same thing, right? There ain't no difference for the actual rich people, right? The actual rich people, uh, it's the problem is the solution, but it's our problem. It's not their problem, right? So really, the solution is being born, right? Because this idea of upward mobility it's a lie. There's no such thing as upward mobility, right? It does not exist. Um, it's virtually impossible. Now we can believe that, oh, well, there's a Jeff Bezos, and he just happened to do these things, and now he's a billionaire. You can believe that if you want, but effectively, for the populace, the general populace, you cannot become rich in this country. It's not now. You can become temporarily affluent. That is possible because that's what I was born into. I was born into the life of a person called Larry Benton, Larry and Debbie Benton, who were experiencing temporary affluence. And guess what? Both Larry and Debbie Benton now live in abject poverty. Yeah, abject poverty. And then, here's how brainwashed I was. I'm from the most historically uneducated, backwards, violent, uneducated, impoverished part of the country known as the Mississippi River Delta. But because my daddy had a high income and we lived in a nice custom home, and my dad could pay cash for, he was into cars. He liked European cars, Jay. I don't know if I've ever had this conversation with Jay. We had brand new Volvos in the driveway of my family home in Arkansas. We had at one point we had two brand new Volvo 240 wagons. We had more brand new European vehicles than we had licensed drivers at a certain point, just because my dad was very frugal. He didn't really spend money, except he liked to go to the car dealer and write a check for a Volvo in 1985 for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's just what he was into. Um, which was funny because there was, really there was not brand new. This is how impoverished the area of the country I'm from is. At a certain point, I was reading my state newspaper in the 90s, and it said Jefferson County, Arkansas is the most economically depressed county in the country. And I was like, wow, that's where we're from. So my dad was the only one driving around. And now part of that was culturally, people just did not like, European vehicles. Hmm. But I actually learned how to drive in a Volvo in Arkansas. That's how bizarre my upbringing was. But, we lived on 5 acres in a custom home, and that's weird. They're coming for me. Somebody actually walked by and like hit my mirror. People are strange, man. People are strange. That's right. If you think there's a solution, you're part of the problem. But yeah, it was interesting because, that fooled me into thinking that, not that we were rich, but that my family was upper middle class, right? Um, Now, I just never cared. It didn't matter to me. And this is probably part of the super high functioning retarded part. I just didn't care. Like, it did not matter to me. The idea of going out into the world and, having a high income. and making a lot of money. It just never occurred to me or appealed to. It just was neither here nor there, right? Um, as long as I was able to do what I wanted to do, it just didn't matter to me. Um, that's probably how it's supposed to be. But then as I got older and older, and as society has moved farther along that progression of the degeneration and the idea of a incoming inequality, the idea of the gap between the rich and the poor. There is no gap between the rich and the poor. You can't divide by zero, because the poor people are the zero and the rich people are the one. That math don't math. You cannot measure the distance between the rich and the poor. There's no such animal as it. Incoming inequality does not exist, because poor folks can't become rich. A person in poverty, it's not possible for them to garner so much wealth that no matter what choices they make, they can't leave the class of rich, right? It's not possible. So the idea of an upper middle class or a middle class, yeah, those are people who have to go to work today. They have to, or they're not going to be able to pay their rent, or they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage, or they're not going to be able to pay their $1,000 car note, right? The $1,200 a month diesel dually pickup, right? If you're from where I'm from, you know, I mean, think about that. It's poor folks. But again, the affluence of American society has tricked people into thinking that that's somehow sustainable for them, not sustainable for the country, because it is sustainable. When people talk about, oh, well, the money system, the financial system, and all of these things are not sustainable. Yes, they are. Absolutely, they are. They're sustainable for the rich people. They're sustainable for the banks, and they're sustainable for the corporations. Absolutely, they are. And whatever that is, whatever those systems are, however all of that got into place, right? You can call it Satan, you can call it evil, you can call it a hell realm, whatever you want to call it, that is absolutely sustainable, 100% sustainable. It's not sustainable for the people, right? For us, who cares? Who cares? Kaczynski tried to warn everybody. Again, I'm sure that was a psyop. He was MK Ultra on record, right? It's almost like the system itself knew that those ideas were so powerful that the system was like, "Hey, we'll just go." It's to the system's benefit to put these ideas forward and then attach them to this Ted Kaczynski character, right? This Unabomber character. It's almost like that was all done intentionally, right? But yeah, usury persons. That's right. There you go. What's up, Kyle? Yeah, 27th in the world for social mobility. There's nowhere to go. But then it's the endless cope of again, always going to blame the individual. America is the worst offender at this. And in some ways, culturally, Americans still have this. The Wild West still exists within us for whatever reason. This idea of that I can just go out here and make my way in the world and pow, 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 fucking gunfight my way to the top. Did Jeff Bezos gunfight his way to the top? Did Amazon climb to the top by defeating all of these other corporations? Right? Is that what happened? I don't think that's what happened. You know? Yeah, that's right. Pew, 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 pew. It's laughable. But as we see, and this is what really makes me not want to hang out with people, whether it's virtually or in person, is look at how quickly people go right back into the system thinking, right? With the pandemic effect happened for a few years, people like me, got to enjoy a little bit of popularity. My podcast, which unfortunately my drinking was so out of hand, I really wasn't able to sustain any of that momentum. That was my fault. Look, I'll own that one, but I wasn't able to sustain that certainly. Um, Probably for the better, honestly. It's probably better that I wasn't. But yeah, that's right, Luigi. Yeah, Luigi. Fuck. Um, but look, this is what I'm not even dismayed about this because I understand why people are the way they are, right? I can't relate to it. But look at how, all of these people just go right back to aligning themselves with the system. And of course it makes total sense. The system formulated their very psychologies. How can you expect people whose psychologies were formed by this very system, and then the system, uh, you know, psychologically put them through the ringer with this fake pandemic, and then for a time, just the general insanity that was those years. There was a few people like me that were already kind of thinking in that vein and suspecting that something not necessarily like what happened was going to happen. But Alex Jones, I listened to his radio show every day for many years, and he was talking about that. He frequently talked about the medical tyranny and the idea of a pandemic and an outbreak, and then the predictive programming, in the movies and the TV shows around some sort of outbreak, right? And then, look at for a time, look at how many people were able to sort of step out of, their normal ways of thinking, right? At least to some extent, and align themselves with certain ideas. But then, like Uncle Ted would tell you, it all just benefited the system, right? And I would like to think I wasn't fooled. Now maybe this is some revisionist history. I would like to think I wasn't fooled, but I probably was. To some extent, I probably, although we can probably go dig up the old Nightmare Dystopia episodes. You can probably hear me on Nightmare Dystopia talking about how this pandemic effect is going to wear off, and I'm certain I was talking about it on this channel. There's got to be live streams of me talking about when this pandemic effect wears off. It's fully worn off, right? People, it's like it never fucking happened at this point, right? It's like it never happened. Hey, what's up, Miss Jane? Good to see you. Been thinking about you here and there. I have thoughts of Miss Jessica from time to time. Appreciate you. Figure you've been busy. Hope you're not offended if I occasionally I might get an email I don't respond to. I hope that's not taken personally. I'll fall back on my super high functioning retarded person. Hopefully that'll get me out of hot water. I don't know. I don't know. It's usually just I don't know what. It's usually I just don't know what to type in response. So anyway, much appreciated though. Your kind words are always well taken. So thank you for that. Well, and this is what I would say, Carl, because I got a metaphorical boner. Because again, I'm not a big fan of people and personalities, but I listened to an old David Goggins interview, and certainly he has his faults, but I have some similar characteristics to Mr. Goggins, and it really appeals to me that idea of going out and struggling and creating, making oneself strong, right? And that's the reality is men are weak unless they make themselves strong individually, and that's just the fact. And in fact, I'll tell you this: in a lot of ways, If you give me 100, if I'm going to lead an army of 100 people, and physicality is not going to play a part, if we're only going to go by mental strength, and I got to pick between 100 women and 100 men, I'm probably going to pick the women. Because I hate to say it, fellas, I find women to be more mentally strong than men by and large. It's just a reality. It's just my opinion. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I've always had a very strong will. I'm pretty sure that came from my mom's side. My dad's a fucking pussy. My mom's tough as nails. Now, not physically, but although she more or less just sloughed off a fucking hip replacement, and I'm on here crying about my teeth breaking. Uh, it's hilarious, and last time I talked to my mom, and I was crying about my fucking broken teeth, and she was giving me sympathy or whatever, and I'm like, well, what about your hip? And she's like, oh, it's no big deal to her. It's neither here nor there, right? But she got a lot of fear, a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety and a lot of guilt. So very female in that way, right? But as far as just like mental fucking fortitude and like the strength to just keep on going, man, women got it a lot of times more than men. Men have it when they tap into it. Men have it when they go inside and connect to it. And I don't see very many males. I don't even call them men. It's just not a characteristic I see. I don't detect it in my fellow men and my fellow males. I don't go out into the public and the populace here and think, wow, these are some strong-willed, tough men. They're just not. Now, so yeah, some of them, of course, some of them are, and they stand out, right? So, not that anybody's falling all over themselves to try to get them a piece of Benton, because certainly they're not. But when I do get followed around the grocery store, or they're creeping on me in the grocery store, it's because that's in me, and people can detect it. They can tell that there's something in there. They're like, oh yeah, like this is one of the people that actually has some fucking fortitude to them. Meanwhile, how did that happen? How did that happen? It's by going to war with oneself. And actually Goggins had a really good quote, and I started to write it down, but then I failed to write it down. But I wish I had it written down. But he had a very eloquent way of putting it. Um, but it's a going to war with oneself. So until a man goes to war with himself, he ain't shit in my book. I've gone to war with myself, and I know exactly what the fuck I'm made out of. And it ain't always pretty, but if we're going to talk about tough times and weak men and all of this stuff, if you're talking about going into a war or going into a battle, whether spiritual or physical, whether metaphorical or literal, you better know exactly what the fuck you're made out of, or you better be able to figure it out pretty fucking quick, right? You better be able to. Um, and that's realistically, that's the only reason I'm here talking to you people. And, I've said in the past, you know, if I could encourage people to do one thing, it would be for them to think for themselves. And that's true. But I would also encourage people, if I could, and I can't, but, to really go inside themselves and reckon with whatever is in there that needs to be reckoned with. That's what I would say. Because every person, as far as I can tell, there's things within them that are unresolved that need to be dealt with. And for the most part, it's people just don't deal with it. And in fact, I would argue that that this system of things gets a lot of mileage out of being able to manipulate based on these base level desires that people really just haven't dealt with. Um, I can look at the early versions of me as a person, and it's night and day. What I desired in the past, I barely even think about anymore. And that doesn't happen without going deep within oneself and dealing with what's there to deal with. But you can't see in America where everything's a business, in America where every man is an island, where I'm expected to go out here and do everything for myself to make my way in the world. There's no version of creating a business that is you pay me money and I harangue you and harass you into kicking your own ass, because I kick my own ass inside my own head every day. I've been doing it for years, and it's second nature. I'm very hard on myself, but I don't do it in a demeaning way. See, this is the paradox. This is the paradoxical nature of this. I eliminated negative self-talk. In fact, that's one of my first practices. Was I realized that I spoke very negatively to myself within my own head, and I realized at a certain point, oh, well, this is detrimental. And then I knocked it the fuck off, but it took a while. It took a while to stop beating myself up in my own head. But I'm very hard on myself with respect to my own errors, and I'm always reviewing uh what I've done on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and looking for, okay, what was my part in this? What did I do wrong? What can I do better next time? I've been doing that every day for years. I'm never going to not do that. But what's happened for me over time is that's less and less and less and less, right? There's way less things that I'm doing wrong. There's way less things for me to work on. And a lot of times it's just like, yeah, that person was being a fucking asshole, and I said, hey, fuck you, asshole, and I'm reviewing it, and there's really nothing for me to have done. That's just some jerk. Versus in the old days, this saying of, if you leave the house and run into an asshole, you just that's just what happened. But then, if every time you leave the house you run into an asshole, guess what? You're the asshole. Well, that was me, right? That was me for a time. Well, it's not me anymore. Um, yeah, and on and on and on and on. There's many different versions of that. Many different versions. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. My head's itching. Does that mean anything good? I don't know. I can't call it. Mm. Well, and see, this is so. El Perro says the world went from holy to royal, from being set apart for God to kingship of man. Now, I'm not disagreeing necessarily, but what I would say is, if that's the case, I will take I will take that, but I will say that what society has become, from my logical thinking, proves that if society went back to a version of being set apart for God, this so-called kingship of man, that it would just degenerate to this again, right? So, hence the folly of looping into problem solving, the idea of reforming dystopia. And I myself used to fall into this thinking, this idea that, well, if we just go out here and inform people and educate people, then of course they will do better and demand more of their so called leadership and fix society. Well, okay, no, but then what if that happened, right? Well, what if that happened and human consciousness continued to evolve, and then people went back to something, if people returned to something like what El Perro's talking about here, if that was the case in the beginning, what I'm saying is it's just going to degenerate to this again anyway. So what's the fucking difference? If you ask me, I'm better for it that I have made myself into this badass motherfucker that's talking to you right now, and I did it within this motherfucking hell, right? That's how badass I am. Is that you could, and then we can tie this into the Bible, that you can metaphorically, you can put me with that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You can put all of us in that furnace, right? In that metaphorical furnace, and I'll be just fine. Now I'll complain about it and I'll whine and cry to some extent, but I will alchemize that. and I will rise up out of them ashes. And I have done that. And uh if another pandemic comes along and here come the dragon and burns everything to the ground, I'll rise up out of them ashes again too. And I'll whine and cry about it, and I'll still do it. You know, who cares? I'm not too concerned about the whining and the crying. You know, to me, that's not representative. It's what is the final state of the person, right? And the fact is, I know I can handle whatever's coming. And if you ask me, if there's a most high, right? If there's a creator, if it's not atheism, if it's not nihilism, if it's not a simulation, then if it's possible for me to be a servant of that force, right? Because I don't like referring to it as a he or the idea of a human gender. But if I'm capable of serving that force, I kind of lost my point, but give me a second, I'll get it back. Then I must necessarily turn myself into a being who's capable of doing that in the best of times or the worst of times, in all scenarios, right? And I believe that's who, um, and that's why I'm not worried about where my next meal is coming from. That's why I'm not worried about where am I going to lay my head. That's why I'm not worried about am I going to go back and drive a truck long enough to, get my driver's license renewed, get, another year of car insurance, get another year of tags on my car. Who cares? It's all going away anyway, right? And if if what I suspect to be the case is the case, if what I suspect to be is the case, I'm necessary to what's going on here. The Most High needs me. And now Mr. Miyagi can say till he's blue in the face, well, actually, no, he doesn't. Bullshit. Bullshit, Mr. Miyagi. That ain't true. That is simply not true. Now, does he need Jason Benton, the individual? No. And again, I'm saying he, but does that force need servants? Absolutely. Does that force need servants who can serve in a variety of circumstances? Absolutely. Right. Am I willing to do that? Absolutely. Well, because what else is there to do? I've done it all, y'all. I've pretty much done everything I would want to do in this life. I have. Yeah, you want to talk about a bucket list? Other than I never got to go to Europe. Now I'm not. Who knows? Maybe I'll get to someday. That's basically it. I've pretty much gotten to do everything I would have ever wanted to do in this life, and that's a true statement. I have virtually no regrets. I could go to my deathbed today and be perfectly fine with the way my life went. You know, how many people can honestly say that? Probably not very many. And that's where we get to this idea of a deathbed. Things that people, confess to the hospice nurses or whatever, that they regret on their deathbed. And I'm on track to have none of that, right? None of it. There you go. Exactly, El Pero. That is why individual discernment with comprehension is imperative. Exactly. Exactly. Now, who do you see developing that? I see very few people developing that. Very few. But I'm not in charge of the developing discernment with comprehension. That's not my department, right? Because again, what have I been harping on all of the recent broadcasts? The sphere of influence, right? Ultimately, my power only exists within me and my own sphere of influence. My ability to influence, it's basically zero outside of how far my arms can reach. It's effectively zero. Now, what is my ability to affect change within my own sphere of influence? And for most people, it's very limited. And that's where we get into, with our own observations. Most people who want to change their life are not able to change their life. Meanwhile, I've accomplished everything I've ever set my mind to. There's nothing I've ever set as a goal and set my mind to that I haven't accomplished. So obviously, I have figured out how to go within my own sphere of influence, contend with what I need to contend with within myself. And then again, like I've said before, the only way out is through to move through my own fucking bullshit to do what needs to be done. I have done that. I am doing that. I will continue to do that. And now I'm putting my name on it, and I'm saying that is in the service of the Most High. And people can laugh at me. People can feel some type of way about it. People I thought were my friends can fall away because I have the audacity to talk that way. I don't give a fuck about any of that. It doesn't matter to me because when this experience is over, when my heart stops beating, when I draw my last breath, none of them people are going to be there anyway. And they're certainly not going to be there wherever my spirit leaves to. Because I know this, whatever my essence is existed before it came to this place. I am 100% certain of that. I was somewhere else. You want to call it soul, you want to call it spirit, essence, whatever. It came to this place. It's here now, as far as I can tell. And as far as I know, I can't be for certain, but when this physical life ends, it's leaving to go somewhere. And none of my friends, none of this audience, ain't none of y'all finna be there. Now, maybe all of those, maybe some of those spirits will reconvene somewhere else. I don't know. It's above my pay grade. That's not my concern. It's got nothing to do with me. Again, back to the sphere of influence. I'm only concerned with effectiveness via what can I control? What can I influence? What can I act upon? Right. Meanwhile, this world has it backwards. This world, again, our psychology is formed within this system. This system will always put your efforts to where they will bear the least amount of fruit, which is outside of your own sphere of influence. Always. Because you got no effectiveness there. None. You got virtually no effectiveness there. You know, excepting perhaps the nuclear family, right? Which is, by the way, what was my dad's greatest accomplishment? It made me. That's it. That's it. That's the only thing realistically my father can point to in his life as an accomplishment. He made me. That's it. I mean, think about that. Now, you want to talk about arrogant? That's who you're listening to. That's as far as I can tell. That's the only thing my dad's done in his whole life was made me. Right. And he made a servant of the Most High. Good for you, buddy. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Now, hopefully, I don't know if that squares the ledger for him. I ain't the judge, right? I ain't the judge of that. Well, they can't change. People can't change. It's an entitlement. And that the system creates that sense of entitlement. The system says, well, again, I've described this, going back to the days of the old podcast, that this is how marketing operates. Marketing, because of the products and services that people purchase, marketing emboldens people to view themselves in specific type of ways to sell them products and services. That's how marketing works, right? And I figured this out because many years ago, NFL Sunday Ticket on DirecTV had an advertising campaign, and the theme of which was become the world's most powerful fan. And my logical, analytical brain fucking the inputs went into my brain, and I had an epiphany and said, oh yeah, why is this an effective campaign? Because it's not, how can you become the world's most powerful fan? That doesn't even make sense. But if you buy the NFL Sunday Ticket, we're giving you permission to feel some type of way and to view yourself some type of way and to believe some type of way. And those people are not going to take ownership of themselves. They're not going to take authority over themselves. Because why? Because when they fail, as they necessarily will fail, by the way, just like when they learned how to ride a bike, they fell down the first few times. Anytime we're trying to learn how to do anything, there's always failure. When they fail, it's their fault and they feel some type of way. See, this is all basic fucking psychology. Lay expert in human psychology. This is basic psychology, right? And you better understand your own psychology. What's up, Venus? Good to see you. You better understand your own psychology because the enemy understands it. I promise you that. The enemy understands it. But see, I started talking about God again, and a third of the audience left. And that's where we're at in society. That's how nihilistic society has become. And it's true. Um, and I'm not here to advocate because Mr. Miyagi is right in a way. God don't need me to advocate for God. Whatever the Most High is doesn't need me to advocate for it because it's if it's valid, it's valid, and that the validity has nothing to do with me. So he is right on that regard. Now, I would say it's only in the context of the spiritual war. It's only in the context of humanity as the substrate in the battlefield for the war between good and the war between evil. The war in the heavenlies, the casting down of Satan, and if that's a thing, and the so-called wager between the Most High and Satan. Right. The fact is, the Satan can only win by capturing all of humanity simultaneously. Right. So that's why I'm needed. That's why other people are needed because it's a timing thing, right? If the time doesn't happen, if I've got another 20 or 30 years, right? I ain't dead yet. It looks like I'm going to last a little longer here. If I've got another 20 to 30, perhaps, if it doesn't happen within that time frame, somebody else has got to be serving the Most High. See how it works? And all that has to happen is when it's 0% servants of the Most High, that's when Satan gets to ring the bell and say, ding, 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 hey, look, Creator, not a single one, just like that Sodom and Gomorrah. You remember when you destroyed that Sodom and Gomorrah? Couldn't find a single one. First, first it was like, well, hey, they appealed and said, hey, what if we can find 100? And they couldn't find 100. Well, what if we can find 10? Couldn't find 10. Well, if we couldn't find a single one, and then had to flee the city, and the city got destroyed. See, that's what we're living in, whether we like it or not, right? And that's the point for me of being used as a vessel of the Most High is I hate evil. Why should evil win? Why should evil carry the day? Now, this gets back to the idea of good men doing nothing. And what I would say is if they do nothing, they're not good men, right? We can't say when good men do nothing. I would say if they do nothing, they're not good men, right? That's what I would say. But, you know, during the time I'm here, if I'm serving creation, if I'm serving good, if I'm serving the opposite of evil, if I'm serving creation and the Most High, then evil can't triumph. Not entirely. It can triumph everywhere outside of my sphere of influence. But that's the aim of the enemy, is to triumph everywhere in the realm, including inside of your sphere of influence. So that's part of going within one sphere of influence and introspectively examining that space to say, well, wait a minute, this system psychologically convinces all of us that, well, of course you're a good person. I believed that for years. Well, of course I'm a good person. Until I introspectively went within myself and reviewed my actions. I said, well, wait a minute. These aren't the actions of a good person. In fact, these are the actions of a bad person. I believed I was a good person. Based on what? Based on what was it based on? And to this day, I hear people say this idea of, well, oh, people are basically good. I say, no, they're not. What are you talking? No, absolutely not. Where is the proof of that? You going to tell me that people are basically good and this is the world they've created? Bull shit. The world is the way it is because it's a reflection of human beings' internal space, but collectively extrapolated out, right? Billions of trials happening simultaneously, right? I mean, come on. Yeah, that's right, Kyle. Synagogue of Satan, right? Oh man. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Arpol. Shout out to undiagnosed fake autism. That's right. Well, super high functioning retarded person. That's what we're going with here lately. Super high functioning retarded person. Got to watch the old battery. We're down to 28% on the. And now this is the major motivation for driving a truck. Is let's be clear. My own internet and device addiction is I need another year of internet. I need another $450 in 2 months. This thing needs another 450 put on it, and probably needs another 159 on some YouTube Premium. And while we're at it, might as well get a new phone also, right? So I dropped when I bought this bad boy 10 months ago. I dropped $900 on this phone, a year of service, and YouTube Premium. Right, that's how I roll. So you know, also known as less than 1 week in a truck. So we'll see. We'll see if I can exploit myself. Can I subject myself to exploitation? I don't know. We'll see. Well, thank you, Joseph. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're glad. Thank you for the compliment. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. And the good Lord's kept me in eggs, man. I don't think there's been a single day when I had to go without eggs because once the temperature cooled down, I was able to keep the eggs longer. So there's 2 dozen eggs in the car right now. So one of them's for in the morning and one of them's for the day after. And hell, there's sometimes I only have to pay $5 a dozen. Sometimes the most I've had to pay was 10.50. 10.50 for a dozen eggs. Yeah, $10.50. Well, it's effectively zero. I mean, this is a name I'm not familiar with. Uh, is this a random person? We like random people stumbling in. It's all good. But yes, this is most people don't rise to that level of consciousness. Though that's the sad part is most are still slaves to their ego and free will. Um, yeah, yep. Oh, is that five? Oh, that's right. Good to see you. Good to see you. I just again, I'm a bit retarded, bit of a retard. Yeah, good to see you, man. Long time no see. Hope you're doing well. Fellow truck driver, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I know. See, I love, this is another reason I love Carl because I saw that, man. I don't really read the news like I used to, but I saw that. Yeah, he says, I believe the Trump economic team has come up with a revolutionary idea of telling people to just get chickens. Yeah. Yeah, just get your own chicken. Yeah, why don't I have a chicken in the fucking back hatch here? You know, I don't even, how many eggs does the average chicken produce in a day? By the way, I don't know how many chickens would I need for a dozen eggs a day, but well, and by the state of California, I'm pretty sure that's not enough space, so I would be breaking the law. So that's not even, that's uh, not even possible here in Cali. But yeah, you just get your own chickens. That's right, just get your own chickens, people. Uh, yeah, believable. I would say unbelievable. Believable. I can believe it. I can believe it. I got so desperate, I was on the verge of Amazon sells some egg yolk powder. And I was started to order some of that, but then I guess because of the skyrocketing price of eggs, they sold out. And I don't know if that would even work in my concoction or not, but who knows? Oh, I'm on the dark chocolate, by the way. Man, the Doves. Shout out to Mr. Miyagi. I'm quite critical of the man at times, but he's just that introduction to my life. The Dove's dark chocolate. Oh my goodness. Now it does contain bioengineered ingredients. It's funny. I don't know if it's a new thing or if I just never noticed on the package. I do read the fucking labels, but it does. It says contains bioengineered ingredients, but that's some damn fine dark chocolate. I've been pigging out on that. Uh, yeah, since the place I used to get my rice and beans raised their price. I was on the canned beans for a while, but then the old digestion wasn't feeling the canned beans so much. So I've just mainly been eating it. Other than the egg concoction, it's mainly been a gang of dark chocolate. Oh yeah, good times. Good times with the dark chocolate. And fortunately, my kidneys have recovered to the point where I'm able to tolerate the sugar. So there was a time when I wasn't able to really handle sugar at all, but or it was limited, I should say. But yeah, feeling good actually. There's a lot of nutrition in dark chocolate. And remember, none of this is health advice. We don't recommend things, but yeah, dark chocolate, big fan, big fan. Well, anyway, it's probably about time. I guess we'll yurt the stream. Be wrapping up soon, I reckon. Checking my YouTube feed. And I'm done with the panel channels. I've unsubscribed from all of them. None of them show up in my feed anymore. It's probably a good sign overall. It's a wrap. That's what I was saying earlier about the loop into problem solving, and at a certain point, it was like 2 years later, it was the same loop into problem solving. I was like, what is this? This is crazy. So I assume it's still the same thing. But I'm mostly a lot of true crime content that I listen to. A lot of um, a little bit of the manosphere stuff, but not really. A tiny bit, which is really more of a taking of the pulse of the general, of just society in general. And then, because I'm retired, thankfully, from all things dating and relationships, but I'm still a man, though. I will show you this. That this occasionally I have one channel. These the bikini try-ons. What do they call these? There's a term for this. Bikini haul or whatever. If anybody's curious, this is the one channel I'm subscribed to. And designs of them. So I'm going to start on with them. Okay, first of all, I'm going to start with this one. Since I've ran most of the ladies off by now, they're probably not too offended by this. Which, if you have watched my vlogs or subscribed to my vlog channel, yeah. In the description, then you will know it's one of my favorite places on earth. So imagine we thought this is really good. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah. About once a month I end up watching one of her videos. That's about it. But yeah. Yep, that's about it. That's funny though. Wait a minute. I missed this. Joseph Started on the carnivore diet January 1st. Been eating at least 5 eggs a day. Yeah, man, eggs are great. Yeah, yeah, eggs are awesome. Uh, yeah, I just do the yolks myself, but yeah, they're great. And I'm convinced that the body can just more or less directly absorb egg yolks. It seems like, uh, and through all of my health problems, these travails, my trials and tribulations, that's, if I, not that I would want to go back to how sick I was at the start, but I would have gotten on the egg yolks much, much, much sooner. Certainly, much sooner. Yeah. Oh man. Ex-wife number two was quite thin, though. Just for the record, I'm not. I like all different types of gals. It's not just. It's not just one type. Certainly, there is a specific waist to hip ratio, though, that most of them tend to have. Ex-wife number one, not so much, but yeah, most of the rest of them had a specific waist to hip ratio. Yeah, exactly. Talcott and Snafu going over their loop for the zillionth time. And that is one thing that I found fascinating is just how Snafu seems to find himself welcomed, on pretty much every channel, right? Like it's at a certain point, it's like, oh look, Toilet Bowl Earth is live. Oh look, Snafu's on. It's like, what is this? Shout out to Drew. I think Drew's pretty much the only one that doesn't really welcome Snafu, although I'm sure he showed up from time to time, right? But yeah, crazy. Oh man. Yeah, exactly. Snafu's half the content. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, somebody's got to be foolish enough, right? I'm gonna sleep good tonight. It's already see. I get to go to sleep in about 3 hours, about 2.5 hours. It's bedtime for me, and that's even if I wanted to try to return to normal society, and imagine trying to be friends with somebody and they go to sleep at 5 p.m. Although in the summertime, it's a little later, but I'm wiped out, man. Like I start powering down by about one p.m. every day. I'll start powering down. But yeah, Mr. Miyagi turned me on to the Dove's dark chocolate. By the way, that's what I was trying to say. Hershey's Kisses, they've got some dark chocolate, but they put that. Y'all heard of this PGPR? It's some kind of it's derived from um, castor beans, castor oil or whatever, and it's all to help improve the viscosity of the chocolate. Uh, you know, Again, big corporations producing all this stuff. So, and by the way, I'm just saying YOLO on the fucking heavy metals. I'm just assuming, I'm taking in the cadmium and the fucking uh, what you call the lead. I'm just assuming that's part of the fucking package with pretty much all the brands of chocolate. But yeah, the Hershey's Kisses, they got the PGPR, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to try, but it's cheaper. It's like the cheapest I can get the Doves is like 66 cents an ounce on Amazon, but then the Hershey's is like 44 cents for 2 pounds. So I don't know, but yeah, the chocolate, man, it's doing me good. I got to say, energy levels are good. My oh, and I do a can of sardines every day too. One can of sardines, uh, omega threes, man. Yeah, the my joint pain is definitely a lot less. I'm having a lot less joint pain. Although I still get the thing where if I've been sitting around, or sometimes if I just stop and I'm standing in one place, like when I start moving again, like my knees and my especially my feet will hurt. But then once I walk far enough, it's like everything sort of gets lubricated again. And I know people will try to say that's normal, but I don't think it's. I think at my age, with how clean my diet is overall, I don't really think I should be. I don't think that's normal. Like my dad's 70, he doesn't really complain about joint pain, and he's a puss. So I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to be in this amount of joint pain overall. And then the snake diet guy, he's promoting a no fat, high sugar diet, and says he's getting shredded. Y'all remember the snake diet guy?
Try and cut body fat.
This guy.
Eating a multiple meal a day routine. It doesn't matter which fucking fat, carbs, or what. Multiple meal a day routine from morning to night. Cutting calories aggressively. Not that I'm losing weight. I would get fucking weak every single time. This guy is where life is the fasting aspect of the cows. I have a guy today I talked to. He's eating carbs. Why is he eating carbs? Because you get more explosive strength eating a little bit of carb. And he's 6 feet tall, 170. We do not give a fuck about weight loss. We want him to build muscle. The best way he's going to build muscle is he's going to keep his protein first, probably 300 grams a day, maybe 400 grams a day. That kind of meat. We don't want him to eat like a horse. But we want him to eat all of it in as tight swing as we can so he's still.
Anyway, this the snake diet guy. Anyway, I guess that's all out of me. Thanks for watching my pretty face. You're welcome. Bye. Oh.